My name is Charlotte Hayes, and I've been retired for just over a year. 66. Widowed. Living alone in my modest Wilmington row house. I've grown accustomed to quiet days filled with little routines, morning tea on the back porch, crossword puzzles, and a slow shuffle through the local market. My Social Security check, $500 a month, keeps the bills paid if I count every penny and skip the extras. Most days, that's enough. Most days, that Thursday afternoon, my phone rang, and the sight of Jason's name flashing on the screen made my heart skip. I hadn't heard from him since last week. When he'd called to confirm his new work schedule, "Hi, Mom." His voice was warm, hurried, but unmistakably familiar. "I wanted to see if you'd come over for Christmas this year. We'd love to have you." I could feel a flush rising in my chest, a mix of excitement and nerves. It had been years since the whole family gathered under one roof for the holidays, and I'd been tucked into my own quiet life, missing the noise and chaos of their laughter. I pictured the living room, garland on the mantel, the faint scent of roasted meat, and the sound of Jason's laughter echoing off the walls. I pictured Amanda fussing over me, just enough to make me feel cared for, and maybe Jason noticing all the little things I'd done for him over the years. I set the phone down, my hands trembling slightly as the warmth spread. In the tiny kitchen, I began clearing a space on the counter. The old suitcase I'd pulled from the closet last week waited patiently, dusted and polished. I imagined the sweater I'd tucked aside weeks ago, soft and bright, folded neatly, waiting to be worn. Even the gifts I'd prepared, Jason's favorite smoked bacon rolls, Amanda's local honey, a jar of preserves felt heavier with meaning now. As I began packing slowly, carefully, I realized this wasn't just about a holiday visit. It was a chance to reconnect, to be seen again, to step back into a place where I had always hoped to belong. And yet, beneath the excitement, a tiny knot of anxiety settled in my stomach, whispering that no matter how much I gave, it might never be enough. The suitcase filled with gifts and memories. I paused for a moment, smoothing the folds of the sweater. Tomorrow, I would make the trip across Wilmington. And for the first time in months, I would imagine the house alive with family and with me finally part of it again. I knelt beside the suitcase, carefully arranging each gift, and memories drifted over me like winter fog. The smoked bacon rolls, still slightly warm from yesterday's baking, reminded me of countless mornings I had risen before dawn, hands sticky with sugar and flour, just to make Jason's favorite breakfast before rushing to the mill. The local honey for Amanda, golden and thick, brought back the smell of the flea markets where I spent entire weekends, haggling and peddling small jars and trinkets to stretch every dollar. Each jar of preserves carried the taste of long summer afternoons, sun beating down on my back, my fingers raw from picking fruit. Knowing it would later brighten a holiday table, I thought of Jason's first day of college, the nervous smile on his face as he hugged me goodbye, my arms aching from carrying his heavy duffel bag and heavier hopes, the wedding deposit I had scraped together, borrowing from friends, pawning small keepsakes. I remembered the tension and quiet pride of ensuring he had the life I had worked for so tirelessly. Every late night, every shift at the textile mill or odd job I took, every flea market stall I manned, had been for him. Even now, packing these simple gifts, I felt the weight of those decades pressing gently on my shoulders. My fingers lingered over a jar of honey, and for a moment, I could see Jason as a boy again, teeth missing, grin bright and unstoppable, and a younger me beside him, fierce and determined, with hope that had carried us both through every hardship. carefully zipping the suitcase closed. I took a deep breath. These gifts were more than food, they were pieces of a life spent giving. Of love measured in labor and small sacrifices. I held them close. A quiet promise that all this devotion, all these years of sacrifice, would somehow, finally, be recognized at the family gathering awaiting me tomorrow. Chapter 3. Arrival and Unease. The drive from my small Wilmington row house to Jason's suburban neighborhood was short, but each turn seemed to pull at my chest with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The streets were lined with neat townhomes, wreaths hanging on doors, faint scents of pine and baking drifting through the chilly air. I parked at the curb, smoothing the wrinkles of my sweater as if it could iron out my nerves too. Amanda was already at the door when I rang the bell. Her smile was wide, perfectly timed, and maybe just a little too bright. "Charlotte, you made it," she exclaimed, ushering me in with a flutter of hands that seemed rehearsed, almost choreographed. "It's freezing outside. Come in, come in. I made some tea, you must be starving." I followed her into the kitchen, suitcase bumping gently against my leg, and felt the warmth of the room seep into my bones. Amanda whisked my suitcase toward the guest room, chattering all the while about the house, the decorations, the latest neighborhood gossip. Every gesture seemed too precise, every word too polished. I forced a smile, nodding along, but a subtle unease twisted in my stomach. Jason appeared in the hallway, rubbing his eyes, dark circles under them. Phone in hand. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice tired, distracted. He smiled faintly, but the half-hearted warmth only underscored the distance I hadn't expected. I nodded back, murmuring a greeting. He already seemed pulled elsewhere, fingers tapping against the screen, eyes flicking from me to whatever he was reading. Amanda returned with a steaming cup of tea, placing it carefully in my hands, brushing a stray lock of hair from my forehead. "Here, this will warm you right up," she said, her tone syrupy sweet, almost overly eager. I sipped cautiously, noticing the faint stiffness in her movements, the practiced way she avoided my gaze when she laughed. The house was immaculate, the air fragrant with roasting meats and spices, the lighting cozy. But a strange tension lingered beneath the surface. Everything was polished, yet something felt wrong. The laughter, the smiles, the gestures, they all seemed calibrated, like a scene rehearsed for an audience of one. My heart tightened slightly as I realized I was already observing rather than participating, watching a performance where I wasn't sure what my role was. I set the cup down on the counter and looked around, the knot in my stomach refusing to loosen. I had arrived, but somehow I felt more like a guest in someone else's play than a mother finally welcomed home. By mid-afternoon, the soft hum of the house was interrupted by the sound of the front door opening again. Amanda's parents had arrived. Patricia swept in first, a whirl of perfectly coiffed hair, bright sweater, and the unmistakable aura of someone used to being in control. She hugged Amanda with a flourish that seemed designed to make every eye in the room note her presence, then turned a glance toward me that lingered just a moment too long. "Charlotte, so glad you could make it," she said, her voice clipped yet polite. Her eyes flicked over my worn wool coat, the one I'd had for years, thick and sturdy, but certainly not trendy. "I hope you're keeping warm. You know, we just bought a little condo down in Miami. The weather there is delightful this time of year." She smiled, but the edge of her tone suggested an assessment rather than genuine interest. Robert followed behind her, quieter, more measured, extending his hand with a soft, polite smile. "Hello, Charlotte. Welcome." He gave the briefest flicker of acknowledgement. Respectful, but distant, as if he, too, knew the social hierarchy that Patricia was quietly enforcing. Patricia leaned in slightly toward Amanda, speaking in a tone light and airy, yet meant to carry subtle judgment. "And you, Charlotte, how's retirement treating you? I hear Social Security isn't quite enough to cover all the little extras these days." She emphasized the last part with a faint lift of her brow, glancing over at me with the faintest smirk that wasn't quite a smile. I forced a polite smile, lifting my teacup as if to deflect the sting. "I manage. Thank you. Health is fine. And I've learned to be careful with my budget." The words felt small, insufficient to defend against the silent weighing of my entire life against hers. Patricia's gaze shifted briefly to Amanda, then back to me. "Well, you know, Robert and I have been quite comfortable for some time. Minimal expenses, steady pensions. We just returned from Miami, and it was heavenly. You simply must plan ahead. Housing costs only rise. It's much easier when everything is set in advance." I nodded, keeping my expression calm, though an invisible knot tightened in my chest. The room felt smaller suddenly, my presence shrinking with each polished word, each carefully constructed anecdote about wealth and comfort. I realized, uncomfortably, that I was invisible, measured not for who I was, but for the numbers that could never compete. I picked at my tea, pretending to sip, my fingers tracing the rim of the cup. Every smile, every laugh, every polished gesture around me felt rehearsed, designed to highlight my absence rather than celebrate my presence. I was a guest, not a family member, and the realization pressed heavily on my heart. Later that evening, the house hummed with the faint clatter of dishes and soft conversation. Jason had excused himself to the study to handle a few emails, leaving Amanda and her mother alone on the couch, ostensibly watching a holiday special. I rose quietly to refill my cup of tea in the kitchen, my hands trembling slightly. A strange, uneasy feeling settled over me, a knot of anticipation and dread I could not shake. I paused near the hallway, the faint crackle of their voices drifting through the partially open door. Amanda's voice, low and casual, carried words I had never expected to hear. "Mom, what can we even do with her? That little pension barely covers her own bills. If she gets sick, we'd have to take care of her. She's a burden." My stomach twisted violently. I froze, heart pounding so loudly I was certain they could hear it. The warmth of the house, the comforting sense of dinner, the twinkle of lights on the tree, all of it now felt suffocating, like a gilded cage. Patricia's tone was precise, measured, cold. "Exactly. I warned you this would be difficult. You need to secure the house while she's still lucid. Don't wait until it's too late. If she leaves it to someone else, you'll have no one to blame but yourself." I pressed myself closer to the wall, hands gripping the edge of the counter, fighting the urge to flee immediately, every word sliced deeper than I could have imagined. My home, the place I had nurtured, the walls that held decades of memories, was being reduced to a commodity, a transaction to be seized. Amanda's whisper followed, almost venomous in its casual cruelty. "That place is old, but the location is good. We could probably sell it for 3, maybe 400,000. Her eyes, if they had met mine, would have shown nothing of the affection I had always believed existed. Patricia added, with terrifying calm. "And don't forget, she's been coughing a lot lately. Looks pale, too. Who knows how long she'll even hold on." I stumbled back, my teacup rattling against the counter, my breath caught in my throat. The smiles, the polite greetings, the cheerful chatter, they had all been a mask. All these years of giving, all my sacrifices. counted for nothing in their eyes. I retreated to the guest room, my legs weak, chest heavy. The soft light of the lamp did nothing to chase the chill that had settled into my bones. I sat on the edge of the bed, letting the words echo in my mind, tasting betrayal in every syllable for the first time. The house that had felt welcoming and warm seemed alien, the cheerful decorations mocking, the twinkling lights cruel, and in that moment, I understood I was no longer simply a mother or a grandmother. To them, I was disposable, a burden to manage, a resource to claim. I closed the bedroom door gently behind me, as if the click of the latch could somehow shield me from the harsh words I had overheard. The house felt smaller now, every laugh and clatter echoing like it belonged to someone else. I set my teacup on the nightstand and took a deep, steadying breath, letting the weight of years, the shifts at the mill, the flea markets, the late nights spent worrying over bills and Jason's future settle fully on my shoulders. The suitcase, already pulled from the closet earlier, waited patiently on the bed. I knelt beside it, folding the new sweater carefully, tucking it into the corner. Each gift, the smoked bacon rolls, Amanda's favorite honey, the preserves I had prepared with trembling care, went in slowly, methodically, as if by handling them gently, I could reclaim some portion of dignity the evening had stolen. I paused over a small photograph I had tucked in among the gifts, Jason at 10, grinning wide, and beside him, a younger me, thick black hair, confident smile, eyes bright with hope and determination. I traced the edges with my fingers and let myself remember all the nights I had returned home exhausted, the ache of every extra shift, the silent pride that I had done my best to give him a good life for decades. I had given everything, and yet, here I was, overlooked, measured only for my modest pension. The pen I found on the nightstand felt heavy in my hand. I scribbled a note to leave on the kitchen counter, keeping it simple and believable. Neighbor Helen had an emergency. I went to help her. Don't worry. The handwriting wavered, mirroring the chaos inside me. It was the smallest deception, yet the most liberating. Slipping my shoes on quietly, I gripped the suitcase handle and eased the door open. The living room was bathed in the soft glow of lamps, the hum of conversation and laughter still rising. Amanda and Patricia remained oblivious, their focus elsewhere. For the first time that evening, I felt a tiny spark of control, a quiet assertion that my life was mine to command. I stepped out into the cool Wilmington night, suitcase in hand. The wind hit my face sharply, biting and clean. My heart still ached, heavy with sadness. Yet there was a small, stubborn lift in my chest. I wasn't running away. I was moving toward myself, toward the life I had postponed for others for too long. And with each step down the quiet suburban street, I felt the invisible chains loosen. I left them physically intact, but symbolically. I had already reclaimed my agency. Back in my small Wilmington apartment, the quiet felt different, this time not empty, but full of possibility. As I unpacked my suitcase, my fingers brushed against something tucked in the lining, my old Canon camera and the faded membership card for the city photography club. I had shelved them decades ago, when life's demands left no room for hobby or joy. Now, holding them again, I felt a spark I hadn't realized I'd been missing. The next week, I enrolled in a beginner photography class at the local community college. The instructor, a retired photojournalist named Mr. Peterson, welcomed me warmly, and I quickly met other students, retirees like me, all hungry to explore long-forgotten passions. Martha, a retired architect, had an eye for patterns in the cityscape. Tom, a former philosophy professor, loved capturing candid street moments, and Linda, vibrant and exuberant, framed her shots with flowers and sunlight. We bonded over laughter, shared frustrations, and the thrill of capturing a perfect frame. I threw myself into every assignment, rediscovering the thrill of chasing light through a viewfinder, feeling alive in a way that years of sacrifice and domestic routine had dulled. Soon, I submitted a few prints to a local exhibition. To my quiet astonishment, one of my photographs, a quiet alley bathed in afternoon light, was accepted. Later, on a friend's advice, I listed some prints in a small online store. The first sale, a modest purchase, really filled me with pride I hadn't felt in decades. Each snapshot, each exhibition, each small connection reminded me that I was not defined by obligations, by others' judgments, or by the years I had spent giving everything to my family. I was capable of creating, of thriving, of living a life that mattered to me. In the quiet of the evening, reviewing my photos and planning my next shoot, I realized how much hope and joy could reside in rediscovering yourself, and how far a single passion could carry you toward freedom. I invited Jason, Amanda, Patricia, and Robert to a quiet restaurant under the pretense of a holiday dinner. The private room hummed with the low clink of cutlery, but tension tightened the air like a held breath. From my bag, I retrieved a small voice recorder, letting it rest on the table where everyone could see. When I pressed play, Amanda and Patricia's plotting filled the room, their words as sharp as knives. They spoke of my pension, my house, how I was a burden and a resource to be claimed. Every syllable cut through the veil of civility they had maintained for years. Faces drained of color, eyes widened, hands frozen in mid-gesture. I cleared my throat and spoke steadily. I have updated my will. The house will be donated to the senior housing program, ensuring shelter for those who need it. My savings will cover my care, my health, and my travels. And the profits from my photography studio will fund the creation of a grant for elderly photographers, giving them the chance to pursue the passions they thought were lost. Amanda's lips trembled. Patricia's eyes flickered with disbelief. Jason's shoulders slumped, a mix of shock and regret crossing his face. There was no argument, no attempt to counter, just stunned silence. I sat back calmly, feeling a clarity I hadn't known I would ever possess. In that moment, the weight of decades lifted. I was no longer defined by others' expectations or greed. I had reclaimed not just my dignity, but the freedom to live on my own terms. Weeks later, I traveled with Emily and our photography group, capturing landscapes, city streets, and quiet moments of human life. My exhibitions drew attention, my online store brought small profits, and my friendships deepened. Each click of the camera, each new connection reminded me that life could still be vibrant, full of purpose and joy. The past was behind me. The family who once sought to control me remained in my history. But my life, my choices, my passions, my freedom belonged entirely to me, and for the first time in years, I felt wholly, irreversibly alive.